Welcome to another week of A Friendly Nudge. So this week we're going to make turkey and feta meatballs. And I don't do a lot of stuff with ground turkey because so often for me it's like so bland. But what I did with this is put enough flavor with it to where it kind of like plays off of each other and works really nice. So this is a little bit of a modification of a recipe that I'd seen. I kind of bumped up the ingredients some. I got 2 pounds of ground turkey. I'm going to use half of that onion, about 4 cloves of garlic, 2 teaspoons of black pepper, 2 teaspoons of salt, a tablespoon of oregano, a half a cup of almond flour, 2 eggs, an 8-ounce piece of feta, a whole thing of parsley, and that whole thing of baby arugula. So this thing is like packed with, great tasting stuff. And these meatballs, it's like we even had them for breakfast a couple of mornings. So first thing I do is put the almond flour in there. That is the oregano. Once again, that was a tablespoon. That's 2 teaspoons of black pepper, 2 teaspoons of kosher salt. Just kind of mixing that up, and then I'm going to add the eggs to it. And what I always do is I always crack eggs in a separate thing, so if I get a shell in there, it's a lot easier to get that out than trying to pick it out of the ingredients. So I'm just going to go ahead and break these up just a little bit, and then once I've done that, then I'm going to add it to the dry ingredients, and we'll get everything kind of combined together. So we're just going to get it in and just kind of mix it up. We're going to be adding other ingredients too, but I want to go ahead and get all of that almond flour incorporated. And once I've done that, then I'm only going to use half of this onion. I think the recipe I'd seen was like a small onion. This was a pretty large one. And, I don't want to overpower it with onion. And I want to get the onion, I'm going to slice them real thin, and then I'm going to, cross cut everything. So it's a dice. But I always like to start off with the onions cut really thin. So now I've got it, going to add it in, and then we're going to go ahead and get the rest of the ingredients. I'm going to put, these are like 4 pretty beefy sized pieces of garlic. I usually try to cut the very ends off. Sometimes that's kind of bitter. And just, once again, try to get it cut pretty fine because, You may or may not want a great big piece of garlic in a bite. Everybody kind of has different garlic tolerances. I love the flavor, but I don't want to overwhelm Jude with it. And now you're just going to cut the parsley up. And, I don't know that there's an easy way to do this. I just kind of give it a good rough chop because, I want to make sure that it can kind of get evenly distributed through the meatballs. And now I use this whole thing of arugula. And we've started using arugula a lot more than spinach. The recipe I saw was for frozen spinach, and they're like, squeeze all the water out. Well, to me, it's like impossible to get all the water out. And I just think arugula kind of holds up better. So I'm adding that all in there. And then I'm going to just break up the feta. And, just kind of make sure that you don't have great big giant pieces. I had to find the big ones and kind of bust those down some more. But yeah, the first time I made meatballs with feta, I was like, okay, this is a combination that really works. And then those are the 2 packages. So it's 2 pounds of ground turkey. And I always make sure that I get the 93% because there's some that's like 99% lean. And for me, it's just, there's not enough fat in there to have any flavor. So, I'm just going to try to get that like all combined so that, as I make them, you kind of can get them to hold together. I have never been able to get the scoop idea to work with meatballs. I always kind of hand roll it. And then the whole goal is you want them roughly the same size. If you have one that is huge and a smaller one beside it, they're not going to cook for the same amount of time. And we're going to put this in a 400-degree oven. And from a timing standpoint, I would say you're about 13 to 15 minutes because, what you're looking for is, about 165 degrees so that that the turkey is cooked through completely. And man, I didn't use sauce or anything with these because the flavor on them was great. Like I said, we had them one morning with some eggs for breakfast, and they were great. So these can work as hors d'oeuvres or main course. It really kind of is up to you. But I think that these are an absolute repeat, and I think you'll enjoy them. Have a wonderful week, and play with your food.